You're done here, Megan. Paul didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He said it calmly, like he was reminding me my coffee was getting cold. My phone was still in my hand, the hospital wristband digging into my skin, my head pounding so hard I could hear my pulse in my ears. One missed shift. One. He slid a termination form across the desk and tapped it once with his pen, already smiling that smug half-smile he wore when he thought he'd won something. My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. This wasn't discipline. This was punishment. This was him making an example out of me because he could. I stared at the paper, black ink on white, official and final. My 6 years at Riverside Medical Supply reduced to a single checkbox under reason for termination, unapproved absence. The fluorescent lights above us hummed. The clock on the wall ticked. And Paul sat there, waiting for me to break. I stared at his mouth moving, explaining policy like he was reading from a script he'd memorized just for this moment. My ears rang. My chest tightened, not from fear, but from humiliation that burned hotter than anger. I had begged him yesterday. Actually begged. I'd sent the doctor's note at 2 in the morning from my hospital bed, fingers shaking as I typed the email. He'd read it. I knew he had because he'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji at 6:15 that same morning. Now he was firing me like I'd skipped work to go shopping or sleep in. Like my emergency room visit meant nothing. Like the note from the doctor meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. He kept talking about attendance policies and professional expectations, but all I heard was the blood rushing in my ears and the word done echoing over and over. Done. Finished. Erased. As he stood to open the door, gesturing for me to leave his office, the words burned in my head like a neon sign I couldn't turn off. My supervisor denied my medical leave and fired me for missing one shift. He didn't expect what happened next. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't have the strength yet. But those words planted themselves in my mind like seeds in concrete, ready to crack through everything Paul thought was solid and permanent. He thought this was over. He thought I'd slink away quietly, too embarrassed or too scared to fight back. He thought wrong. I grabbed my purse from the chair, my hands somehow steady even though my insides felt like they were collapsing. Paul held the door open, still wearing that smile. Security will escort you to collect your things, he said. Standard procedure. Standard. Like any of this was normal. My name is Megan Walsh. I'm 34 years old. I worked that job for 6 years without a single written warning, not one performance review that wasn't marked exceeds expectations. I paid my rent with that job. My health insurance came from it. My sense of stability lived there. And that morning, as I walked out of Paul's office clutching nothing but my purse while a security guard appeared at my elbow, I realized I was being erased for the crime of getting sick. 6 years of showing up early, staying late, covering other people's shifts, training new hires, and never complaining. 6 years of being reliable. And it all ended because I spent one night in the emergency room with a kidney infection that made me feel like someone was stabbing me from the inside. I'd worked through colds, migraines, and once even a sprained ankle. But this time, my body gave me no choice. And Paul punished me for it. 2 days earlier, I'd been lying in a hospital bed under fluorescent lights that were too bright and too cold. The emergency room doctor, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes, had reviewed my chart and said firmly, "You're not cleared to work tomorrow. Your body needs rest, and you need antibiotics. Push through this and you risk serious complications." I'd nodded, barely able to focus through the pain medication fog. As soon as they discharged me at 1:30 in the morning, I sat in my car in the parking lot and emailed Paul immediately. I attached the doctor's note, official, signed, stamped. I typed carefully, "Paul, I'm so sorry for the short notice. I was admitted to the ER tonight with a kidney infection. The doctor says I can't work tomorrow. I've attached the medical documentation. I'm scared about missing work, but I'll be back as soon as I'm cleared. Please let me know if you need anything else from me." His response came at 6:15 that morning, "Okay. Take care." That message would matter later. Paul had favorites. Everyone at Riverside knew it. If you drank beer with him after work at Murphy's Bar, if you laughed loud at his inappropriate jokes, if you acted like he was the smartest person in every room, you were safe. You could show up late, leave early, miss deadlines, and Paul would cover for you with excuses about extenuating circumstances or personal growth periods. But if you worked quietly and went home to your actual life, if you didn't treat him like some kind of king, you were disposable. I wasn't loud. I wasn't needy. I didn't laugh at jokes that weren't funny or pretend to care about his opinions on sports teams and stocks. I thought that made me invisible in a good way, professional, low maintenance, reliable. Instead, it made me convenient. A person he could punish without consequence because I didn't have protectors in his inner circle. I should have seen it coming. The security guard walked me to my desk like I was a criminal. Todd was his name, and he looked uncomfortable, wouldn't meet my eyes as he stood 3 feet behind me while I opened my desk drawers. Co-workers pretended not to look, but I felt their stares like heat lamps. Keyboards stopped clicking. Phone conversations paused. One woman, Carmen from billing, met my eyes across the cubicle dividers and mouthed silently, "What happened?" I couldn't answer. My hands were shaking too hard to pack my keyboard, the framed photo of my niece, the coffee mug my sister gave me last Christmas that said, "World's okayest employee." Everything that made this space mine for 6 years fit into one cardboard box that Todd handed me without a word. The walk to the elevator took maybe 30 seconds, but felt like 30 minutes. Every step echoed. I kept my chin up, but inside I was dissolving. Before I even reached the parking garage elevator, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I fumbled for it, half expecting some final cruel message from Paul or HR making sure I understood I was banned from the premises. Instead, the screen showed, "You okay?" It was Evan, a senior analyst from the logistics department on the 3rd floor. We'd worked together on several cross-functional projects over the years. He was quiet, smart, and one of the few people at Riverside who treated everyone the same regardless of their job title or relationship with Paul. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then I typed back one word, "Fired." 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "What? For what?" I typed, "Missing 1 shift. I was in the hospital." His response came fast, "That's not legal. Do you have documentation?" I did. Oh, I did. That night, I didn't cry. I sat on my couch in my dark apartment, the only light coming from my laptop screen as I reread the emails over and over. The doctor's note with its official letterhead and clear statement, "Patient is medically advised to refrain from work for minimum 48 hours due to acute infection requiring 4 antibiotics." Paul's response, "Okay. Take care." The termination notice I'd been forced to sign, citing unapproved absence in violation of company attendance policy. 3 documents that told completely different stories. Paul had bet everything on me being too tired, too sick, too scared, or too ashamed to fight back. He'd bet on me accepting this quietly because that's what quiet people do. He'd calculated that I'd just disappear, update my resume, and slink away into unemployment without making noise. He was wrong. Dead wrong. And as I sat there organizing files and screenshots into a folder labeled documentation, I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger. Clarity. I didn't want revenge. Revenge was messy, emotional, and usually backfired on the person seeking it. What I wanted was simpler and more permanent, my dignity. So I organized everything like I was preparing for a trial. Dates in chronological order. Screenshots with timestamps visible. Company policies printed from the employee portal I could still access until midnight when they'd lock me out. Paul's email with the thumbs up. The doctor's note. The termination form with its false claim of unapproved absence. I created a timeline document, clean and factual, with no emotional language or accusations. Just facts. Just evidence. I slept for 3 hours, woke up at dawn feeling strangely calm, and started making calls. First to the hospital to request copies of my discharge paperwork and treatment records. Then to my insurance company to confirm the visit was documented. Then, at exactly 9 o'clock when I knew they'd be open, I called the corporate HR compliance line. The HR representative, a woman named Patricia who spoke with a soft voice and hard eyes during our video call, listened to everything I said without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad, her pen scratching efficiently. We'll review this situation thoroughly, she said when I finished, her face professionally neutral. This is a serious allegation. I watched her expression carefully as I forwarded the email chain to her in real time during the call. First Paul's thumbs up response to my medical emergency. Then the termination notice claiming unapproved absence. Her pen stopped moving. Her soft eyes went harder. I see, she said slowly. And you have the original doctor's note? I held it up to the camera, official and undeniable. I'll send you a scan immediately. That was the first crack in Paul's carefully constructed story. I could see it in Patricia's face as she tried to maintain professional neutrality while her mind clearly raced through the legal implications of what I'd just shown her. We'll be in touch within 48 hours, she said. While I waited for HR to respond, I dug deeper into the company policy manual. It was boring, dense, written in corporate language that seemed designed to confuse rather than clarify. But on page 17 of the employee handbook, buried under sections about parking validation and break room etiquette, I found it. One sentence that Paul had clearly ignored or assumed I'd never read: medical leave supported by written documentation from a licensed healthcare provider cannot be denied by a direct supervisor without written justification reviewed by human resources. Cannot be denied. Not may or should. Cannot. I highlighted it in yellow with my physical copy and took a photo. Then I sent it back to Patricia with one line: please confirm this policy applies to my situation. No accusations. No anger. Just a question that had only one possible answer. The response took 6 hours but came before end of business. Policy confirmed. Investigation ongoing. Those 3 words meant everything. Suddenly this wasn't just my word against Paul's. This was Paul versus company policy. Days passed like slow torture. No response beyond that confirmation. My savings account balance dipped lower each day. My confidence, which had felt so solid when I first organized my evidence, started to waver in the silence. What if corporate decided to protect Paul instead of admitting fault? What if they found some loophole I'd missed? What if I'd just made myself unemployable by fighting back? Then, on day 6, my phone rang. Evan's name appeared on the screen. Hey, he said, his voice careful. Quick question, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Did Paul approve your medical leave in writing? My heart started pounding. Yes. He sent me a message saying, okay, take care. Evan went quiet for a long moment. That's a problem, he finally said. A really big problem. For him. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you mean? He exhaled slowly. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but screw it. They're auditing his entire department. Every leave request, every termination, every scheduling decision for the past 2 years. Apparently, my complaint had triggered something bigger than just a review of my specific termination. It triggered an audit of Paul's management decisions across the board. Scheduling practices. Leave approvals and denials. Turnover rates in his department versus others. Discrimination complaints that had been filed but dismissed. Once corporate started looking closely at the pattern instead of individual incidents, problems emerged like cracks in a dam. I wasn't the first person Paul had pushed out. I was just the first one with ironclad documentation proving he'd approved my leave before punishing me for taking it. According to Evan, who heard things through the logistics department grapevine, 2 other former employees had reached out to HR after hearing through mutual contacts that an investigation was underway. Both had similar stories. Both had been told their departures were voluntary resignations, after Paul made their work lives unbearable. The difference was they didn't have the email proof I had. But their testimonies added weight to a growing pile of evidence that Paul's department had serious problems, and Paul was the common denominator. I started applying for other positions quietly. No angry posts on social media about being wrongfully terminated. No dramatic LinkedIn updates about fighting injustice. Just professional applications to companies that valued the skills I'd spent 6 years developing at Riverside. When a recruiter from North Point Distribution called me for a phone screening, she asked the inevitable question, I see you recently left Riverside Medical Supply. Can you tell me about your reason for leaving? I told her the truth calmly, without emotion or embellishment. Medical emergency, documented leave, terminated for taking it, filed complaint with corporate. The facts spoke for themselves. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I appreciate your honesty. That sounds like a difficult situation. Would you mind if I did some reference checking with people at Riverside other than your direct supervisor?" 2 days later, she called back. Her tone had changed completely. "We spoke to your department head, Vincent Torres. Not to Paul Crawford. Vincent spoke very highly of you. In fact, he seemed genuinely upset you'd left the company." The offer from North Point came exactly 2 weeks after my termination. Better base salary, 15% higher than what I'd been making at Riverside. Full benefits that started immediately, not after 90 days. Remote flexibility 2 days per week, something Riverside had always refused despite our jobs being entirely computer-based. Professional development budget. Actual paid sick time that didn't require approval from a supervisor who held grudges. I read through the offer letter 3 times, afraid I was missing some catch or condition. But it was real. It was better in every measurable way. I accepted before HR at Riverside even finished their investigation. I signed the offer letter, sent it back within an hour, and felt something shift in my chest. Not triumph exactly, but something close to it. Relief mixed with validation. I was moving forward. Paul's attempt to erase me had failed. In trying to punish me, he'd accidentally freed me to find something better. The irony wasn't lost on me as I typed my acceptance email and hit send. 3 days after I accepted the North Point offer, Patricia from HR called. "We'd like you to come in for a meeting," she said. "Tomorrow at 10 if you're available." My stomach tightened. "What kind of meeting?" "A resolution discussion regarding your complaint." Something in her tone made me agree. The next morning, I dressed professionally and drove to Riverside's office for the first time since being escorted out. Patricia met me in the lobby and led me to a conference room. Paul was already there, sitting stiffly in a chair against the wall, not at the table. He wouldn't look at me. Another HR person I didn't recognize sat beside Patricia. They used careful words. Procedural error. Failure to follow established policy. Miscommunication regarding approval documentation. Corporate speak for "Paul screwed up, and we're trying not to get sued." Then Patricia said the sentence that mattered. "After thorough review, we've determined your termination was improper. It's being reversed in our records, and we'd like to discuss your return to work with full back pay for the time you've been absent." I smiled politely, genuinely, and said the words I'd been rehearsing in my head since accepting North Point's offer. "I appreciate that. But I've already accepted another position." Paul's head snapped up so fast I thought he might hurt his neck. His eyes went wide. The unnamed HR person blinked rapidly. Patricia's carefully neutral expression cracked just slightly. "I'm sorry," she said. "You've accepted other employment?" I nodded calmly. "I start at North Point Distribution next Monday. Better position, better benefits, better culture. I won't be returning to Riverside." The silence in that conference room felt thick enough to cut. Paul's face had gone from pale to red. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. I could practically see him realizing what this meant. He'd terminated me thinking I'd be desperate to come crawling back. Instead, I'd landed on my feet somewhere better. And now his misconduct was officially documented in HR records, but there was no happy ending where the wronged employee returned and everyone moved forward. Just consequences. Patricia cleared her throat, glancing at her notes like they might provide a script for this unexpected situation. "Then I suppose this meeting is primarily informational," she said carefully. "To notify you of our findings and the corrective actions being taken." Paul finally looked at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw something other than arrogance in his expression. Understanding. Fear, maybe. He finally got it. This wasn't about me getting my job back. This wasn't about money or back pay or reinstatement. This was about accountability. This was about him learning that actions have consequences, that treating people as disposable eventually catches up to you, that documentation matters more than authority. I didn't gloat. I didn't make speeches. I simply sat there, calm and professional, while Patricia outlined the corrective actions being implemented. Mandatory management training. Review of all previous termination decisions. Closer HR oversight of scheduling and leave approvals. Paul would hate every second of it. That knowledge was enough. The next morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone. An email sent to all Riverside employees the previous evening, timestamped at 6:45. Subject line: Leadership Restructuring in Supply Chain Management. I opened it expecting corporate jargon about exciting new directions and organizational optimization. Instead, I found 3 short paragraphs announcing that several management positions were being realigned to better serve our operational needs. Paul Crawford's name wasn't listed under the updated management structure. His entire position seemed to have vanished from the organizational chart attached to the email. I stared at my phone screen, rereading it twice to make sure I understood correctly. He was gone. Not demoted, not reassigned, not put on a performance improvement plan. Just gone. My phone buzzed with a text from Evan. Did you see the email? They walked him out yesterday afternoon, right after your meeting. No box. No goodbye speech. Just quietly escorted out by security. Exactly how he treated you. The symmetry was almost perfect. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt quiet satisfaction mixed with something like sadness, not for Paul, but for how preventable all of this had been. If he'd just followed policy. If he'd just treated people with basic dignity. If he'd just not been cruel for the sake of asserting power. But he'd made his choices, and now he was living with them. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail out of habit, then curiosity made me check the message. Paul's voice, strained and defeated. Megan, it's Paul. I just wanted to. We should probably talk about what happened. I think there's been some misunderstandings, and if we could just. I deleted the message before he finished. Then I blocked the number. There was nothing to discuss, no misunderstandings to clear up, no olive branches worth accepting. He'd had his chance to do the right thing when I sent him that email from the hospital at 2 a.m. He'd chosen differently. Now we both had to live with our choices. The difference was, I could sleep peacefully at night. My first day at North Point Distribution felt surreal. They sent me a welcome package that arrived the Friday before I started. New laptop, noise-canceling headphones, a company backpack, and a handwritten note from my new supervisor, Brenda. We're thrilled to have you joining the team. Looking forward to everything you'll bring to North Point. If you need anything at all during your first week, I'm here. I read that note 3 times, looking for the catch, the hidden expectation, the subtle threat. There wasn't one. It was just genuine welcome. On Monday morning, Brenda met me in the lobby personally. She showed me around, introduced me to the team without making a spectacle of it, and made sure I had everything I needed. At lunch, she asked casually how I was settling in. No interrogation about my previous employer. No suspicious questions about why I'd left. Just genuine interest in making sure I felt comfortable. I realized then how abnormal Riverside had been. This was what normal workplace relationships looked like. Professional, respectful, human. Word traveled through the industry faster than I expected. Not gossip exactly, but information. HR audits leave paper trails, and people talk. Within a month, I heard through 2 different professional contacts that Paul was having trouble finding another management position. Not because people were spreading rumors, but because thorough background checks included calling previous employers, and Riverside's HR department was apparently giving very careful, very legal, very damaging responses to reference requests. They couldn't say he was fired. But they could confirm dates of employment, confirm he was no longer with the company, and when pressed about whether they'd rehire him, give the corporate equivalent of a very loud no comment. In our industry, that was everything. Reputation mattered more than almost anything else. Skills could be taught. Experience could be gained. But trust, once lost, was almost impossible to rebuild. Paul hadn't just lost his job. He'd lost the one thing that mattered most in supply chain management: credibility. 3 months into my new position at North Point, Brenda called me into her office. My immediate instinct was anxiety, old wounds from Paul's management style making me expect criticism or correction. Instead, Brenda smiled and slid a paper across her desk. "Performance review," she said. 3 months is early, but I wanted to give you formal feedback." I scanned the document. Every category marked exceeds expectations or outstanding. Written comments praised my initiative, collaboration, and problem-solving. At the bottom, a note about a merit-based bonus and accelerated review timeline for advancement opportunities. "You're exactly the kind of employee we want to invest in," Brenda said. "I don't know what happened at your previous company, but their loss is definitely our gain." I felt tears prick my eyes and blinked them back. "Thank you," I managed. "This means more than you know." She nodded, her expression kind. "I think I have some idea. Just keep being you. That's more than enough." That evening, I finally let myself cry. Not from pain or anger, but from relief and release and the sudden understanding that I was actually okay. Better than okay. If someone had told me 6 months ago that getting fired would be the best thing that ever happened to my career, I would have thought they were insane. But sitting at my desk at North Point, working with people who valued my contributions and treated me like a human being rather than a disposable resource, I understood something important. Paul didn't destroy me by firing me. He freed me. His cruelty forced me to stop settling for less than I deserved. His violation of policy gave me documentation that protected me and exposed his pattern of misconduct. His assumption that I'd quietly disappear pushed me to stand up for myself in ways I never had before. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make threats. I didn't beg or grovel or compromise my dignity. I told the truth, provided evidence, and let the system work the way it was designed to work. And when that same system tried to pull me back into a place that hadn't valued me, I had the strength to say no and walk towards something better. That's the real revenge, if you want to call it that. Not tearing someone down, but building yourself up so high that their attempts to diminish you just look pathetic. Not dwelling on anger, but channeling it into action. Not seeking destruction, but demanding dignity. Paul taught me something valuable, though not what he intended. He taught me that sometimes being pushed out of somewhere toxic is life's way of pushing you towards somewhere better. And sometimes the best response to cruelty isn't revenge, it's success. The kind of success they can see but never touch. The kind that proves you never needed them in the first place. They just needed you. And now they know it.